The Father's Day gift bag had my name on it. The eviction notice inside didn't. I stood in my own living room holding a glossy blue gift bag with silver tissue paper sticking out of the top. A card rested inside. "Happy Father's Day, Dad." I smiled. For a brief moment, I believed my son had remembered who I used to be. Then I reached beneath the card, pulled out a manila envelope, opened it. My smile disappeared. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Your health insurance policy has been terminated effective immediately." I read it twice, then a third time, certain I'd misunderstood. I hadn't. Before I could speak, my daughter-in-law raised her champagne glass. "There, now we can finally afford that kitchen remodel." Several people laughed. My son didn't. He simply nodded. It was the responsible decision. I looked from the paper to my son. "Responsible?" He shrugged. "Dad, you're 73. How much healthcare do you honestly need?" The room fell strangely quiet. Someone coughed. Nobody defended me. "My name is Leonard Hayes. I spent 47 years repairing commercial elevators, hospitals, schools, office towers. If an elevator carried people safely, there was a decent chance I'd helped keep it running. I wasn't wealthy, but I believed in preparing for bad days. Every paycheck. I saved something, every overtime shift. I bought a little more security. When my wife, Margaret, died 6 years ago, I promised her something. I'll never become a burden to Daniel." She squeezed my hand. "You won't. You've planned too carefully." We both believed that neither of us imagined the danger wouldn't come from illness. It would come from family. After Margaret passed, Daniel insisted I move in with him and his wife, Vanessa. "Dad, the upstairs suite is empty. You'll have your own bedroom, your own bathroom. You'll never be alone." I hesitated. My house was full of memories, but loneliness can make almost any invitation sound like love, so I sold it. Not cheaply, not desperately. I sold it because Daniel said something I'll never forget. "We're family. What's mine is yours." I believed him. The money from my house stayed in my own accounts. I paid my share: utilities, groceries, property taxes, home insurance, even half the landscaping. I never wanted anyone saying they were supporting me. Vanessa loved telling friends how generous they were. "Our door is always open. Leonard lives with us." She never mentioned I was paying thousands of dollars every month to stay there. 2 months before Father's Day, she started bringing up money. "Dad, insurance premiums keep going up." Daniel agreed. "We've all got to make sacrifices." I assumed they meant cutting streaming services, eating out less, postponing vacations. Never once did I imagine they were talking about me. Father's Day arrived warm and bright. The backyard was decorated with blue balloons, neighbors, friends. Daniel had invited nearly everyone on the street. There were hamburgers sizzling on the grill, children running through sprinklers, music floating from hidden speakers. It looked like the perfect family celebration until the gifts came out. Mine arrived last. The blue bag, the silver tissue paper, the envelope. I stared at the cancellation letter. "There must be some mistake," Vanessa laughed. "No mistake. We cancelled it ourselves." My heartbeat slowed. "What do you mean? We?" Daniel finally met my eyes. "You signed the authorization." "I never signed anything." He walked into the kitchen, returned carrying a folder. He opened it, pointed to my signature. There it was. Perfect, identical to mine. Except I had never seen that page before. I looked closer, then noticed something. The date the signature had supposedly been made. On the same morning I'd been admitted overnight for dehydration. The hospital, where I'd never once left my room. I slowly folded the paper, looked directly at my son. "I didn't sign this." Daniel sighed loudly. "Dad, you're confused." Vanessa smiled. "It's okay, memory problems happen." Several guests nodded sympathetically, not toward me, toward them, as though they were patiently caring for a difficult old man. Then Daniel reached into the gift bag one last time. There was one more surprise. He handed me another envelope. This one wasn't from the insurance company. It contained a single key, not to the house, to a storage unit. And beneath it, a handwritten note. "You need to move out by tomorrow evening." I looked up. Vanessa was still smiling. Daniel wasn't smiling anymore. He was avoiding my eyes. Neither of them noticed. One guest standing near the back fence had quietly taken out his phone and started recording everything. I didn't touch the storage unit key. I placed it back inside the envelope. Then I asked one question. "Who packed my things?" Vanessa answered immediately. "We did." My workshop, packed, your mother's piano, sold. Daniel looked uncomfortable. It was taking up space, in the boxes. My medications? Vanessa shrugged. Probably. That single word, probably, told me exactly how little thought they'd given to throwing my life into cardboard boxes. Guests began slipping away. Nobody wanted to witness what came next. Nobody except the man standing near the fence. His name was Victor Lang. He'd lived across the street for almost 15 years. Retired insurance investigator, quite observant, the kind of man who noticed details everyone else ignored. As I walked toward my car, he caught up beside me. Leonard. I stopped. I recorded everything. I looked at him. Why? He glanced toward Daniel's house. Because your son lied. I frowned. You don't know that. Victor smiled slightly. I know insurance, and I know fraud. He lowered his voice. Companies don't cancel a policy because a family member calls and asks nicely. They require identity verification, documentation, alialization. If that signature isn't yours, somebody committed a felony. That word echoed in my mind. Felony. Daniel hadn't simply made a cruel decision. He might have committed a crime. That evening, I drove to the storage facility. Unit C214. The lock clicked open. The fluorescent lights flickered to life. The rows of boxes filled the room. Everything I owned, reduced to inventory. One box caught my attention immediately. Medically opened it. Prescription bottles, blood pressure monitor, hospital discharge papers. Then, a folder labeled insurance. Inside was a copy of the cancellation request. I looked directly at the signature, then at another page clipped behind it. It wasn't just my signature. Someone had also changed. My mailing address, every future insurance notice, had been redirected, not to me, to Daniel's email, and his home office, meaning they never intended for me to know, not until Father's Day, not until they could humiliate me in front of everyone. The next morning, Victor met me for breakfast. He arrived carrying a laptop. I couldn't sleep, so I looked something up. He turned the screen toward me. The insurance company had recently partnered with an online identity verification system. Every policy change created a digital audit trail, time, location, DBFU, everything. Victor looked me straight in the eye. If someone forged your authorization, they also left fingerprints. Digital ones. I called the insurance company. After several transfers, a supervisor answered. I'd like a copy of every record related to my policy cancellation. She asked several security questions. I answered everyone correctly. There was a long pause, then her tone changed. Mr. Hayes, according to our records, you personally completed the verification online. I did not. Another pause. I'm going to place you on hold. 5 minutes later, she returned. Sir, there appears to be an issue. What kind of issue? The verification wasn't completed from your phone. It originated from another registered device. What device? I'm sorry, I can't disclose that over the phone, but our fraud department will. By late afternoon, a fraud investigator called me directly. His first sentence made my hands go cold. Mr. Hayes, has anyone in your family had access to your driver's license? I closed my eyes. 3 months earlier, Vanessa had insisted on organizing everyone's important documents into matching binders. She'd borrowed my license, my Medicare card, even my Social Security statement. She returned them an hour later, smiling. I'd thanked her, the investigator continued. We believe someone uploaded copies of your identification, used facial verification, and electronically signed documents while impersonating you. He paused. We also discovered another request submitted last week. My stomach tightened. What request? He took a breath. To remove you as the policy owner and transfer all future correspondence to your son's account permanently. I stared out the motel window, across the parking lot. Families were unloading luggage for weekend vacations, completely unaware that my own son had spent Father's Day trying to erase me from my own life. Then the investigator said something that changed everything. Mr. Hayes, our legal department would like to meet with you tomorrow morning. They believe your case involves much more than insurance fraud. It may involve attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. For the first time since Father's Day, I wasn't thinking about getting my insurance back. I was wondering, How many other documents Daniel and Vanessa had signed, using my name? The insurance company's legal department occupied the entire 9th floor, glass walls, quiet hallways, people speaking in low voices. Nothing about the place felt dramatic. Yet by the time I left, 3 investigators were no longer looking at my case as an insurance dispute. They were calling it a pattern. A woman named Rebecca Sloan introduced herself. "I'm the director of corporate fraud investigations." She slid a thick folder across the table. "We've spent all morning reviewing activity connected to your account." I opened it. The first page showed my cancelled policy. The second made my heart stop. There were 6 different documents. Not one, 6. Each carried my name. Each carried my signature. None of them belonged to me. Rebecca tapped the stack. Prescription coverage, emergency medical authorization, life insurance beneficiary update, hospital notification preferences. Then, the property ownership questionnaire. I looked up. "I've never heard of that." "You weren't supposed to." She opened another file. "This form listed your residence. According to it, I was no longer living in Daniel's house, not because I'd been forced out, because I'd voluntarily moved 3 months ago." I frowned. "But I lived there." She nodded. "We know, the paperwork says otherwise, so why would someone lie?" Rebecca looked directly at me. "Because certain legal protections disappear once it appears someone moved willingly." Daniel hadn't just planned to throw me out. He'd been building paperwork for months, one forged document at a time. Before I could process that, another investigator entered the room. He carried a sealed evidence envelope. "We recovered the login records." Rebecca smiled faintly. "This part is interesting." She removed several printed photographs, security camera stills. The insurance website had required identity verification. That verification included webcam snapshots. The first image showed my driver's license. The second showed someone's hand holding it. The third showed Daniel sitting in his home office, using his own laptop, my license in one hand, his face clearly reflected in the computer monitor. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. He had unknowingly photographed himself committing fraud. Rebecca folded her hands. "Mr. Hayes, we're obligated to report this." I nodded slowly. "I understand, but before we do, I'd like one thing." She looked surprised. "What?" "I'd like my son to tell the truth." Without realizing, I already know it. That opportunity came sooner than expected. The following evening, Daniel called for the first time since Father's Day. His voice sounded almost cheerful. "Dad, I've been thinking. I don't want us fighting." I remained silent. "So, I found a solution." "What solution?" "You can move back." I almost laughed. "Move back? After everything? There are just a few papers to sign." Of course there were. He invited me to lunch at a country club he'd recently joined. White tablecloths, expensive wine, private dining rooms, everything designed to impress. Vanessa greeted me with a hug, one I politely stepped away from. She pretended not to notice. A leather folder waited beside my plate. Daniel smiled. "Nothing complicated, just paperwork confirming we're helping manage your affairs." I didn't open it. Instead, I asked, "Manage what exactly?" He leaned forward. "You've been forgetting things. The insurance, the bills, the house. It'll protect you." There it was again, the lie they'd rehearsed for months. I finally opened the folder. Power of attorney, financial authority, medical authority, property authority, everything. If I signed, Daniel would control every decision left in my life. He pushed a pen toward me. "Dad, trust me." I looked at the signature line, then back at him. Quietly, I asked, "Should I sign it the same way I signed the insurance papers?" The color vanished from his face. Vanessa froze. Neither of them moved. Neither of them breathed. Because only 3 people in the world knew those insurance documents had been forged. The investigators, me, and the person who forged them. Daniel slowly lowered his eyes. For the first time in his life, my son realized he wasn't sitting across the table from a confused old man. He was sitting across from the only witness who could destroy everything he had built. Daniel didn't touch the pen again. Neither did I. The waiter arrived with lunch. 3 expensive plates. Nobody lifted a fork. Finally, Vanessa forced a smile. "Leonard, let's not make this bigger than it needs to be." I looked at her calmly. "You already did." Daniel swallowed hard. "Dad, I can explain." I stood. "No, you've been explaining for months. Today, you can listen." I left the leather folder on the table, walked past them, and never looked back. The following Monday, the insurance company's fraud division officially referred the case to state investigators. I wasn't the one who called the police. I didn't have to. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. Every forged signature, every login, every uploaded document, every webcam image, every digital timestamp. One by one, the lies they'd built collapsed under the weight of facts. A month later, Daniel called again. This time, he wasn't asking me to sign anything. He was crying. "Dad, they froze our accounts. They're investigating everything. I could lose my license." His voice cracked. "Please, talk to them. You can fix this." I sat quietly on my porch, watching birds gather around Helen's old bird feeder I'd rebuilt outside my new cottage. Then I answered, "I didn't do this to you. You did." Vanessa tried a different approach. She arrived at my cottage carrying homemade lasagna. The same woman who laughed while my insurance disappeared now stood on my porch pretending nothing had happened. She smiled nervously. "We're family." I almost smiled myself. Family. That word had meant so much to me once. Now, it sounded like a tool people reached for only after everything else failed. I didn't invite her inside. Instead, I handed her a grocery bag. Inside were the house keys, the garage remote, a few family photographs she'd packed into my storage unit. "I think these belong to your house." She stared at the bag. "Aren't you coming home?" I shook my head. "My home is wherever I'm treated with dignity." Then I quietly closed the door. 6 months later, the investigation ended. Daniel accepted responsibility for submitting forged documents and impersonating me during the insurance cancellation process. He lost more than money. He lost the trust of everyone who had believed he was a devoted son. Vanessa's laughter disappeared long before the legal paperwork was finished. People remembered Father's Day. They remembered the party. They remembered how proudly she'd toasted. Saving money, no one laughed anymore. As for me, I never bought another large house. I didn't need one. The Bennett cottage became exactly what Helen and I always dreamed of after retirement. A small garden, a woodworking shed, a front porch where neighbors stopped for coffee instead of gossip. Every Father's Day, the local senior center now hosts a community lunch. Not because I'm important, because too many older parents spend that day alone. The first year, 12 people came. This year, more than 200 filled the hall. No expensive decorations, no speeches, just tables full of parents and grandparents who deserve to be celebrated. Last Father's Day, a volunteer asked if I'd like to say a few words. I stood, looked around the room, then said only this: "Never let anyone convince you that needing care makes you less worthy of respect." The room became silent. I lost a house, I lost a son, but I never lost my name. And once I remembered that no one could take anything else from me. People stood, not because I had won, because they understood. Dignity isn't something your children give you. It isn't something money buys. And it isn't something that disappears with age. It's something you protect, even when the people you love forget its value. That afternoon, as everyone gathered for a group photograph, one little boy tugged on his grandfather's sleeve and asked, "Grandpa, what was your Father's Day gift?" The old man smiled. He pointed toward the crowded room. "This, I got my family back." I smiled quietly. Not every family is connected by blood. Sometimes, the family that stands beside you after betrayal becomes the one that truly deserves your heart.